UPS. Maybe I was not lucky enough. But when I go to law and teach the political theory and Indian government and politics, I try and, especially Indian government and politics, I try and make them understand, if at all you want to understand any Indian government and politics, you need to know what systems theory. And I actually make them understand what is systems theory. And IGP is just like that understood. That is how the strength of systems theory here. Because when you see here, that's what anyway we will go into David Easton. So if you take, that's what I was trying to relate with family. Like even Aristotle was talking about, right? That state is like a family. State is like family writ large. Plato was telling that state is nothing but individual writ large. So even our own system, right? Even our own system you take, it is, if you approach systems theory, things will be very clear. There is input, there is output, and there is some kind of productivity, some process goes on. This is the systems theory. But each and every part of our body or each and every part of a state is very, very important. That is what the systems theory is all about, right? So this was the person, Bartleby. He was a biologist. He was the one who influenced the systems theory. And because of him only, later on, right, Gabriel Almond or David Easton, who actually used systems theory extensively to talk about or to explain political systems, it was influenced by Bartleby. So this is what he says. It's a set of elements standing in interaction. That's what he say. That's what each and every part of our body is very, very important for our survival or functioning, right? Or, right, whatever we do, it is very, very important. So that's what you need to have elements, and those elements should not be standalone. That's what many times I talk about class unity, because each and every one of you are important for the larger system of the class, right? Or you take anything, either department or normal. Suppose if India is really united, the productivity would have been more. Even take your family system. If there are certain issues in the family, the productivity of the family goes down, or it may affect the children, isn't it? You would have noticed, if not in your family, you would have noticed in somebody's family, right? That is how it is. This is what system is. So in simple, the definition of system is elements and interaction. So irrespective of the governmental system, all these three are there. Whether that be authoritarian, monarchy, democracy, doesn't matter. Do you agree with that? All are there. Of course, in monarchy, they are fused in one person. But in a democracy, they are all there. In republic, they are all independent. But each are important for any state to function, isn't it? So that is why they are all interdependent. One, okay, reinforces the other. Without legislature, executive cannot have any laws to implement. Without both, judiciary has no function at all. It can't do anything, right? So this is how it is. There are components, but they also have aim. To achieve that aim, you all work together. So this is in simple, that is known as, right? So you have other people. However, Talcott Parsons, he try and this we will go later when we talk about Parsons AGIL model, we will talk about later. He actually tried in the sociology, he applied this systems theory, but the influence was Bertalanffy, who was a biologist. David Easton, Gabriel Almond applied it to political systems, right? So this is how it all. And Emily Durkheim, you all heard about Emily Durkheim? Who was he? Who was Emily Durkheim? Who was he? He was a sociologist, okay, or he was a anthropologist also. Good. Okay, right. So he was a sociologist, but he was also an anthropologist, right? So he applied, Parsons and Emil Durkheim applied in terms of the the social systems. Now, this is the diagram you have to keep in mind. Maybe any literature which it's already there. 2 articles are already been posted on systems theory. Before we meet on Monday, please read one article at least and come, right? Especially David Easton's article, you read and come. If you don't understand also, don't worry, but please at least flip through and read and come, right? So this is the systems theory all about, right? So you have at the core political system, like I was telling, either that be family or any institution, or it could be a country, it doesn't matter. At the core is the system. You have actually the inputs, which are divided into two, demands and supports. All those things we will go into detail. And then you have what is known as outputs, because any system has to give some output. Otherwise, there is no point in having a system redundant. That is the quality of feedback. That is why media is called as fourth estate, because it is part of the system which gives feedback, because it refines the system. If the three pillars are legislature, executive, and judiciary, media gives you the feedback to refine those three pillars, right? That is why media is called as a fourth estate or fourth pillar, right? So this is in simple. Now, if you apply this in our families, you see our family is a system. You have demands and supports. Demands means what? We may, hey, I have to pay fees for my school or college. You go and ask, give me pocket money, get me groceries, give me food. These are all demands placed on the system. We ask, right? We ask. Support means either that be financial support or in terms of efforts, right? So you say mom, okay, does a lot of work at home. Father goes for a job and he gets all kinds of funding for the family. These are all the supports. And as a result, because of support, the demands are met by the system, right? The system takes care of all those things because of the, right? You have a demand. To meet that demand, you need a support. Suppose if you don't have support at all, only demand, what will happen at the country level? What will be the demand and what will be the support? Anyone? Can you just equate? What will be the demand? What are the demands? Can anyone equate it? At family level, I told you. Right, go ahead. The taxes is the support to meet that demand, whatever you have, right? And suppose if you take, for instance, some policy, right? Some policy government is bringing. Suppose you take, for instance, I want to eradicate or I want to do away with Article 370 or something. So that is some decision government has taken, but on what basis? There could have been some inputs, right? Isn't it? Some inputs. Some inputs must have come that this is the best for the system, right? That either you bring in reservation, right? You incorporate OBC reservation. In 90s, in 80s and 90s, they brought this, right? In early 90s, they brought this reservation as a policy. The system made a decision to bring this. That was based on what demands? They had a demand, right? They had a demand from a section of community. And the support was whoever that particular community that supported it. They said that government is right. But at the same time, you had anti-370 protests, anti whatever the Mandal Commission protests. You all had, some people self-immolated also, right? So you also have, in terms of inputs, when some decisions are made, right? When decisions are made, the the demands are also in the form of anti-support, right? So this is also possible, right? So this is what it is. So both demands and supports are taken into consideration as inputs, then it's fed into the political system, and then decisions are made accordingly. And this is where the character of the system comes, right? Anyway, we will go into it. So with that context, let me go into it. So this is what it is, right? It allows, this is what all about. So all I tried to explain was simply this, where you have, if you want to understand the system, any system, the systems theory will help you. It helps you a lot. That is where the significance of systems theory is all about. So now we'll go into who was responsible, and David Easton was responsible for this, right? And this was his work, Political System. In 1953, he wrote this, An Inquiry into the State of Political Science. You know what was his background. So where do you fit in? Was he a traditionalist, or was he a behavioralist, or was he a post-behavioralist? What was he? Exactly. Now that's why now you see one book he wrote 1953, one work was influenced by, right? Influenced by behavioral. And after a decade, he writes another book that was a post-behavioral, right? And our inquiry or our understanding of political system comes from his later work, right? And this is where so he writes, actually the story goes like this. He writes a large, big book, right? Very large book on the systems theory, right? Anyway, I've given you a short article written by him. It's easily written. Don't think that David Easton wrote. It's going to be difficult for us to understand. You go and read that. So what happened? He sends to publisher. It was more than 1,000 pages. The publisher says, we cannot publish this. It's too big. So you do something about it. So what David Easton did was he divided that into two books. So one book he named as Framework, and other he did it on the analysis. Now even when you're writing your article, you have this one part after introduction, framework of analysis, right? Then you go into the empirical, the case of it, right? So this is how he gave us a full-fledged thing. So they told him we cannot publish it. So he divided the framework separately and the systems analysis separately. So this is how you can see how in 1 year he could write 2 books. Don't get surprised. It's actually one book which was divided into 2 books. So this is how it is. So according to him, so now you understood what was the system. So it's going to be easy for you, right? So now you saw the diagram, right? So in the light of the diagram, is it difficult to understand what he tries to say, right? So political system is all about, he says, interrelated. So there are elements, it's all interrelated activities, and it operates within the environment, right? So you can just have that system diagram, and there is an input, there is a process, and there is an output, and there is a feedback. This is how it is, and all these operate in an environment. So country also operates in an environment. That environment is your international system, right? So this is what it is, right? He introduces what is known as authoritative allocation of something known as values, right? Now this is where I'm going to bring in, right? So according to Easton, like I told you, Harold Laswell, let me digress a bit. What was his definition of politics? What was his definition of politics? Anyone? I told you this in the class many times. Harold Laswell defined, right? He defined politics as something very simple, right? I told you many times in the class, right? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, no problem. Harold Laswell says politics is nothing but who gets what, when, and how. Simple. Nothing but what will I get out of something, when will I get, and how will I get. That's why this politics is always there in our life. Even in family context also we can apply this. Politics is nothing but you have to go and take mic, go for elections, win elections, go to parliament, fight there, go to canteen and eat samosa and chai, come back. That is not this politics. That is also politics. That is at the higher politics, higher order politics. But day in and day out, that's what somebody was telling, no, man is a political animal. That is exactly true, because we are into politics day in and day out, because we look for our interests, our family interests, our institutional interests, or our country's interest, and always see that when will I get, how will I get, and what will I get. This is what all politics is. And we make sure that we get it. Whatever it means that we adopt, we make sure we get it. And that is according to Harold Laswell. Now, David Easton defines politics in a different manner. That is where systems theory is very, very important. He says any system, right, that is involved in authoritative allocation of values, right, that is implemented in a particular system, and that he calls it as a state, right? That's what he says here, side. The behavior, political system is a behavior. Political system here means either a country or whatever, right? Set of interactions, right? Which through which authoritative allocation are made, which means here authoritative means who is the authority. Somebody has to be authority, right? And who is that authority? And authority here means either that could be a government or a dictator or a monarch or a leader or a family. Even in our family, somebody allocates, right? This much, right? This much we will spend on this much we will spend on that. This is how we will run. So, right? So this is how authoritative allocation. And that's why every year we have budget for that authoritative allocation. Budget is nothing but authority, either that be finance minister or cabinet, right, or the government. It plans how to allocate the resources, right? That is only a small thing. That's only an economic component. But you take any component, how an authority decides on how much to allocate. The values here means not our moral science values, truth, punctuality, not that. Values here means it includes anything, whichever is you are using, right? You know these Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You have the base, right? You have the basic needs and you go up and then you end up in self-esteem needs, right? All those are values. Anyway, I will tell you these are all the values, right? So now you see, yeah. So anyway, I will put this in, right? So these are all values. So, but it has a hierarchy. But somebody has to allocate it, right? Who allocates? And that, according to Easton, in a country or a government or political system, right? The system allocates. There is an authority to allocate, right? This is how it is. And now you can see in this particular context, now you see there are various ones. Family takes care of our affection needs, right? And then you have governments, all those things. It takes care of the power, or then you have organizations, right? These are all various components of political system, right? These are the components, various components of the system that fulfills needs of the community or the society, right? This is how David Easton tries to actually project that as a right system. Got it? So this I'm putting in a different context, Easton's theory, right? So where you have a political system, or otherwise he calls it as a black box. Why it is a black box? So I may know, since I was from the system, I know how decisions are made. Some of you will be knowing because you will be joining the system later, right? So you don't know what is happening in the system, and somehow somebody funnily called it as black box. But for that, you get the influence from the environment. That environment could be international system, or the society also influences you. That is called as environment. So this is taken into consideration. But you can see here inputs, right? It could be, now you see, funnily, election results, public opinion, right? Communications, right? Media, and you can also see personal experiences. All these are acting as an inputs for the system or the black box to make decisions. And then you can see these are the outputs, right? These are the various forms of outputs from the system, because system makes the decisions and then the outputs are like this. Simply put it, orders, ordinances, laws, regulations, whatever it be, those are all the outputs from the system. So overall, in simple, what the systems theory is all about is any system needs to function in an effective manner. You need to have credible inputs. That's why it's very, very important. You need to have elect a good government with good leader, right? This is very important. That's why some democracies function really well. Some democracies are sham. Some democracies, they may just call as democracy, but they are just electoral democracies. because they don't know how to actually get the good leaders, maybe because there are no good leaders, right? That's why there is a saying, people deserve the government. Why did they say that? People deserve the government means what? You only elected, you only gave that as an input. Don't complain later because you deserved it, because you only, right? And if you go to US, there is one organization known as Pew, right? They conduct this public opinion surveys quite often. The other day, you must have read this news about the New Zealand Prime Minister rating is very, very high. Maybe because, which means that shows that as an input that gives a lot of motivation and encouragement for the system to function. In the sense that, okay, whatever decisions we are taking, whatever that we are doing are good because people say so. Sometimes your rating is very less. In US, this happens quite often because they're very obsessed with all these public opinion surveys, right? They take it very seriously. Here, we don't bother much about it, right? Even if we go on road and protest as an input, nobody is taking, but there it's taken very seriously, and the system corrects itself. Okay, somewhere I'm going wrong, so I have to correct myself, where that is also taken as an input, right? So media is taken as an input, or even the person who is, those days kings used to go, right? A night rounds, they used to go, good kings I'm talking about. They used to go arounds and ask and see people what they are thinking about the government, about the king, and all those things, and those are also taken into inputs. That's why inputs are very, very important. The more the credible the inputs, the better your decisions are. Even at the R stage, that's what I was telling, what kind of materials that we read is very, very important for our understanding and knowledge. What kind of food we eat, that also decides, right? Whether some of us don't eat at all, that's a different case. But what kind of food we eat makes, that's what somebody was defining a body as a heap of food. Your body is nothing but heap of food, isn't it? Suppose if you are not taking anything, will you grow like this? Suppose I'm very fat, means that conveys two things. I'm not eating the right things and I'm not exercising properly, right? Or I'm eating only non-vegetarian, I'm eating only vegetarian. So what kind of food we eat, it all depends. Nowadays, you must have seen a lot of people are wearing glasses, right? Why? What happens? Because somewhere something has gone wrong in terms of your intake of some vitamins have gone wrong, or you are straining yourself too much. So this is how it is. So that is why in any system, you take any system, inputs are very, very important for the quality of that particular system. And if the quality of the system is good, it makes right decisions as a form of outputs. Okay, we will go into details in the next class. I will continue. I will stop here. Any doubts on this? 9:50. Yeah, any doubts you want to ask on so far? So we introduced what was system. We tried to compare with the family systems, right? And then we introduced the political system, and that is how David Easton figured. I gave you a background of it, and then I introduced his system or his definition of what is system, right? This was his diagram, and then he went into what was political system, his works. These are very, very important. As I told you, there are two articles already there, right, on David Easton and by David Easton. So read them, okay, carefully, and please come for the next class. We will go into it because I want to finish systems theory. Next, I'm not sure because I want to go into details of it. So in simple, his definition we saw, it is nothing but authoritative allocation of values, and then we saw what are those values, and then we saw in detail, right? We are going to go into details about it because this is very, very important to understand how a country functions. Systems theory will help you. What is the politics behind the functioning of any system, and any decisions are taken, how that actually happens, right? So this is where we stop. Any doubts, feel free to let me